Okay.
Yeah, because I know you DM'd me last week saying it was in a repair shop, and I was like, oh wow, okay,
Yeah,
so
no, it had some problems.
okay, I know, I understand that full well, because God knows how many problems I had in the past with my computer and everything else. I may have to somehow, I know I mentioned this a couple times about the computer I'm currently using, but I'll have to figure out sometime soon. And of course, we're recording this as always, and we'll premiere it later on tonight on my channel. And tonight we're looking at the album Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs by Derek and the Dominos. And
Dominoes.
Dominos, yes. Let me get up the information here on my phone. All right, there. So, YR, have you heard of the band Front 242 by chance?
Are you live right now, or?
No, we're recording this right now. I gotta talk
Um,
to possibly Ken or somebody else about fixing the settings on my OBS so I can go live
Well, we
without
got.
any problems.
We'll try. Man, it sucks.
What's up?
Nothing, man.
No. Like I said, was trying to say, I tried to get a hold of Off Ken, and let's see there. And YR left a call there. I guess he's going to possibly set it up on his end there, which I don't mind. Like I said, I tried to stream a techno set on Friday night, and unfortunately, the stream just ended abruptly. So I got to figure out what settings to properly put it in on my OBS for it to go live without any issues. Now, I had no issues with the other computer that I was using, but sadly, I wasn't able to get all the set,
Settings.
settings. Thank you. I was not able to get all that taken care of because I didn't expect the damn thing to fry up like it did. Let me get this album here. Layla album. All right. Okay, I got the Wikipedia up. And once again, folks, we're continuing our look at albums that made a huge impact in both rock and roll and in society. And we're going to talk about the only album by this project featuring Eric Clapton and the late Dwayne Allman from the Allman Brothers. And we also got to get into one of their other members, Jim Gordon, and find out what the heck happened to him because he ended up in a lot of trouble in terms of drug use, mental health, and everything else. You need to definitely dig into him, that's for sure.
Yeah, actually, Dwayne Allman's death is the main reason Derek and Domino's didn't continue.
Wow, really? Because I remember for a while, if I'm correct, they did make an appearance on the Johnny Cash show later on.
Well, I think so, and they were
Yes.
planning to do some more work.
And I know that there was a post Layla album titled In Concert, which featured the four members as was. That was later released after Allman's death.
Yeah,
And of course, Allman, who died that same year of a motorcycle accident. And there's a big detail about how he died. I guess, for I understand, according to one TV show I watched, Allman got into this wreck and was almost close to death. And I guess, Greg Allman, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, just as well, he decided, I guess him and the other members of the Allmans, please begged to some, spirit or a witch doctor or some priest or voodoo priest or whichever it was. I'm not too sure who they for help, but they was able to keep him alive. Please let him be around for at least about a year. And when that year passed, boom, he was taken from us from a motorcycle accident.
yeah.
Yeah. So we're very sad because he played a big part on the guitar work on this album. No doubt about that. In fact, I guess he was recommended to join the project by Eric Clapton himself. All right.
He did most of the slide work, I think.
I believe so, yes. Now, we all know the theme of the album, or actually the title track. It was written for Patty Boyd Harrison, who was then the wife of George Harrison, one of the Beatles and Eric's best friend. Who cannot forget Eric playing lead guitar on While My Guitar Gently Weeps for the White Album. And what's really interesting is that at one point, Eric even confessed his love of Patty to Harrison himself. Now, I don't know what went down afterwards, but the two were able to remain the best friends for years on down the line, up until Harrison's death. I know Clapton took part in that concert for Bangladesh that put together. I know they did some work together in a couple of solo shows that Harrison was doing in Japan, for I understand, just as well. A couple
Hmm.
years after the Cloud Nine album came out, Harrison's album, that is, that was a big hit back in 1987.
Yep.
But
Which, by
anyways,
the way, another album to look at is All Things Must Pass.
yeah, we got to talk about that album, that's for sure, because that album made a huge impact. In fact, we got to dig into the song My Sweet Lord. I know we already talked about that album, or excuse
Hmm.
me, that song, but definitely you never yet you have yet to see the video for that song, have you?
Mm-mm.
Oh, you gotta check it out. Look it up here on YouTube. It's definitely a good album. I mean, a good song, no
Well,
doubt
yeah,
about that. Well, a lot of the songs in the All Things Must Pass album are pretty good. What is life? You know, My Sweet Lord. In fact, there was
except we're talking about Layla.
yes, I know we're talking about Layla as well. Of course, it was the only album that they put it out, and like Ark said, after Dwayne Allman's death, the band was pretty much kaput. I guess they did a couple shows, as I mentioned earlier. Let me go to the storyline here, thanks to Wikipedia. It was released in November of 1970 as a double album on Polydor Records in the UK and Atco Records here in America. And it's best remembered for its title track, other songs like Bell Bottom Blues, I Looked Away, Thorn Tree in the Garden, Why Does Love Gotta Hurt So Bad? And the other band members were Bobby Whitlock, who was the keyboard player, drummer Jim Gordon, and bass player Carl Radell. Now, of course, Dwayne Allman played lead and slide guitar on 11 of the 14 songs of this release. Now, it was regarded as a critical and commercial disappointment originally. It failed to chart in Britain and peaked at number 16 in the Billboard Top Album charts in the United States. It returned it to the US charts in 1972 and in 1974 and in 1977 and has since been certified gold by the RIAA. It finally debuted on the UK album charts in 2011, peaking at number 68. In 2000, the album was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. 2 years after that, television network VH1 named the album the 89th greatest album of all time. In the same year, Rolling Stone magazine ranked it number 117 on its list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. It was ranked at number 226 in the 2020 reboot of the list.
Wonder what number one was.
I'm not too sure. I'm just reading
Probably
probably
Michael Jackson.
or the Beatles or
No,
Synchronicity. Probably yeah, maybe so. Who knows? Or maybe Pink Floyd. Remember,
I
usually
doubt
album.
that.
Who knows? Usually albums that sell the massive amount of copies as opposed to usually end up on the top of album lists on various magazines.
Hmm.
But then again, we cannot overlook the Revolver by the Beatles.
Right. Rubber Soul.
That's true. Those two albums just as well. We can't forget Sergeant Pepper. Now, in 20, excuse me, in 2012, the Super Deluxe edition of the album won a Grammy for Best Surround Sound Album.
Mm.
Now, the project grew out of Eric Clapton's frustration with the hype associated with his bands, the Power Trio, Cream, and Blind Faith, which paired up Clapton with Steve Winwood. Traffic.
Basically, it was Cream without Jack Bruce.
Yep, exactly. Or Ginger Baker. Well, Ginger Baker
No,
was
he was
part.
in it.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Got confused between the two bands. Now, Clapton got involved with Delaney and Bonnie and Friends when he had came to know them while they were opening the act for Blind Faith's U.S. tour. After that band also split up, a friend of theirs, Bobby Whitlock, joined up with Clapton in England. From April 1970, the two had spent weeks writing a whole bunch of songs just to have something to play. And
The
as
reason
Whit,
they went with the Derek and the Dominos name was because he was trying to cover up he was in it.
oh yeah, so it was kind of like an alias name that he was choosing because
Basically.
Clapton was a well-known figure at that time. He'd been in a lot of bands, John Mayall's Breakers, the Yardbirds, Cream, Blind Faith, and now this project. Now I'm going to go to the Dwayne Allman's arriving at the group. Now Tom Dowd, spelled Dowd, was working on the Allman Brothers' second record when the studio received a phone call from Clapton that was bringing the Dominos to Miami to record. Upon hearing this, Dwayne Allman indicated that he would love to drop by and watch if Clapton approved of it. Alt Allman later called Dowd to let him know that his band was also in town to perform a benefit concert on August that year. When Clapton learned of this, he insisted on going to see the Allman Brothers play, saying, "You mean that guy who plays on the back of the Wilson Pickett song, Hey Jude? I want to see him play. Let's go." Stagehands seated Clapton and his posse in front of the barricade, separating the audience from the stage, where they sat down. Allman was playing a solo. As he turned around and opened his eyes and saw Clapton, he froze. Dickie Betts, the other guitar player for the Allman Brothers, picked up where Allman had left off, but he but when he followed Allman's eyes to Clapton, he had to turn his back to keep himself from freezing himself. I mean, like I said, Eric Clapton was a big deal around that period, with all the
Hmm.
bands and all the songs that he had put together with all these other bands. So he was pretty much a big deal. Now, after the show, Allman asked Clapton if he could come by the studio and watch some recording sessions. But Clapton invited him there directly, saying, "Bring your guitar, you got to play with us." Jam it together all the night. The two bonded. Tom Dowd reported that they were trading licks. They were swapping guitars. They were talking shop and information and having a ball. No holds barred. Just admiration for one another's technique and faculty. Clapton wrote later in his autobiography that him and Allman were inseparable during the sessions in Florida. He talked about Allman being the musical brother I never had but wished I did. Now, the majority of the songs on Layla were products of Clapton and Whitlock's collaboration, which produced 6 of the 9 originals on the recording, with 5 covers included to make it up the balance. Clapton used what is called a 5-watt tweed Fender Champ during the sessions. Now, is that a guitar or an amplifier, this Fender Champ?
I'm going to say it's a guitar, but I don't know that.
Let me look it up right now here. Yeah, it's an amplifier. Yep. It was a amplifier made by Fender. It was introduced in 1948 and discontinued in 1982. An updated version was introduced in 2006 as part of the vintage modified line. Right? Now, the original songs, I Looked Away, Keep On Growing, Any Day, Bell Bottom Blues, Tell the Truth, and Why Does Love Got to Be So Sad? Now, Thorn Tree in the Garden, which Clapton brought, he also brought in I Am Yours from a poem by somebody named Nizami, and of course the title cut, Layla, written for Patty Boyd Harrison, who he was extremely in love with at that time.
Infatuated's a better word.
Exactly. Tell the Truth had been intentionally recorded with an upbeat tempo in June of that year with producer Phil Spector. It was issued as a single with Roll It Over the B-side. However, Whitlock recalls Spencer's wall of sound approach did not fit the band's style, so they had the single withdrawal. They had the single. On August 28th, with Allman contributing slide guitar, the song was recorded as a long and slow instrumental jam. The version with vocals released on the Layla album captures the jam's slower pace. Both vocal sessions were later included in the 1972 compilation, The History of Eric Clapton. The last track of the album, Thorn Tree in the Garden, was recorded with Whitlock, Clapton, Allman, Carl Radell, and Jim Gordon sitting in a circle around a single microphone. Now, the cover of the album is definitely outstanding just as well.
Looks like a work by Dolly.
Exactly here. Now, their covers here is included. We have Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out, which was originally recorded by Jimmy Cox. Key to the Highway by Charles Sager and Willie Brunzi. Have You Ever Loved a Woman by Billy Miles. And a cover version of Jimi Hendrix's Little Wing. And of
Yep.
course, yep, and It's Too Late, originally recorded by Chuck Willis. Now, the recording of Key to the Highway was unplanned, triggered by the band hearing, so what's this called? Sam Sarmandio performed this song for his album Hard and Heavy in another room in the studio. When the Dynamos spontaneously started playing it, Dodd told the engineers to roll the tape, record this now, resulting in the tune's telltale fade in. Bobby Whitlock's version of the story is that the tape was rolling nonstop for the entire session, but that Dowd had taken a laboratory break, leaving the faders on the mixer down. As the jam began, he came back into the control room, pulled up his trousers, and yelled, "Push up the faders!" The artwork, as we all know, was actually done by a person named, let me see if I can pronounce this guy's name, Brandine D. Schomburg, if I got that correct. But thanks to his son for the abuse of his house. That was credited on the album.
Hmm.
Bobby Whitlock revealed in an interview that while they were staying in Emil's house in France in August of that same year, he took them into his father's studio just after they had made a mess by having an egg fight. It was there that they saw the painting. Let me see how I can pronounce this one. The Girl with Bouquet. That's what it means in U.S. A painting by Emile Theodore Francine de Saumberg. This became the cover of Layla and other assorted love songs, as you can see. Clapton immediately spotted a likeness between the blonde haired woman it depicted and, of course, Patty Boyd Harrison, because she was blonde just as well. Clapton also insisted that the image be used on the album sleeve, with no text added to give either the band's name or the title of the album. Basically, you had to do it on the back cover of the album to find out who was credited on the songs as well.
Uh, I had to wade through the 500 albums backwards,
Hmm.
but I found out what Rolling Stone called the #1 album.
Uh huh.
Marvin Gaye, What's Going On?
Interesting. Excuse me. Interesting album. If it's to
Yeah, but
say that
number
was,
one?
well, you know what? Well, you gotta remember, these are albums that really told a lot. Marvin Gaye said a lot of what was going on with the streets, the environment, and everything around him at that period of time. It was a concept album of what was going on around him at that time in terms of politics, in terms of the Vietnam War, everything else. I mean, and by the way, we got to spotlight that album sometime pretty soon. By the way, may I also recommend Cyndi Lauper's cover version of the title cut from that album. That came out in 1986. Pretty impressive cover, I will say. Now, check this out. 46 years after Francine gave the painting to Eric Clapton, it was also the subject of a French lawsuit in which Clapton was ordered to pay compensation for altering the image of a cardboard prop up used on the 40th anniversary of the album. The family of Francine, who died in 1969, received about, let's see here, 15,000, what do you call it in France, dollar bills?
Franks, I guess.
Francs, I guess it was called. In US terms, it was $16,400. 16,400, my bad.
Hmm.
Now, Clapton later gave the painting to George Harrison, who gave the painting to Patty Boyd.
Hmm.
Boyd put the painting up for sale at an auction at Christie's in February of 2024 with an estimate of 40,60,000. Let me see if I get there. 40,60,000 pounds, alongside letters and notes from both Clapton and Harrison. Now, we need to get to the live performances that this project did. They went on tour to support the album, and performances of those shows were later released on the album titled In Concert in 1973. Allman never toured with Derek and the Dominos, but made two guest appearances with them. On one, actually, let me rephrase that, in December 1st of 1970, and the following day in New York City, Syracuse, New York, I should say. They also appeared on the Johnny Cash show, as I mentioned at the beginning of this program, which became their only television appearance. Filmed at the Grand Ole Opry House in Nashville, Tennessee, and broadcast on January of the next year, the band performed It's Too Late and then joined Cash and Carl Perkins for the classic Matchbox.
Mm.
Now, Clapton continued to play the song Layla at Live Aid in 1985, and that was, I believe, the first time he ever performed a song live in how many years?
When
In
I
two,
went to see Clapton, it's been 15 years
yeah,
at least. At
yeah,
any rate, he did Layla.
yeah, no problem, no surprise. Clapton and J.J. Cale, the man who wrote originally the song Cocaine, which Clapton covered and made a big hit, recorded The Road to somebody here. What's it called?
Oh,
Escardino, I think it's pronounced, on which the Allman Brothers guitar player, Derek Trucks, played guitar. Following this, Clapton went on tour with Trucks as part of his band. Clapton explained later that playing with Trucks made him feel like he was in Derek and the Dominos once again. As the tour progressed, the set changed, with the first half of the show consistently only from songs from the Layla album, and of course, communing, of course, colliding with, of course, the Layla song itself. Now, we also cannot forget the unplugged version, 1992.
right.
It was a bluesy, more softer, relaxed, laid back version. That was a big hit just as well. I mean, it was played a lot of times on MTV, VH1, and on commercial radio stations, especially the soft rock stations around that time.
One of the cover bands I was in, we did that song,
Yeah.
the slow version,
Well, yeah, the bluesy version, as I call it.
because we didn't have a piano player. And Layla, the regular version, Layla's got that long piano solo.
Yeah, it's true there, yes, as well as the slide guitar from the Dwayne Allman himself. Now, there's different compact disc release, I should say. The 1983 two CD set on RSO Records, which was operated by Robert Stigwood. RSO standing for Robert Stigwood Organization, which also had the Bee Gees, Eddie Gibb, the band Player, and a couple others. Clapton was signed to that label during the later half of the 70s and early 80s, which explains why the Layla album was released on that label. The two CD set featured a 16-bit remastering, the Layla Sessions from September of 1990, remixed on one CD with two additional sessions discs. There was the September 15th, 1993 Mobile Infidelity Sound Lab 24 KT limited edition gold CD release, 20-bit remastering. Damn, how much remastering did these guys come up with? There was the August 1996 Polydor 20-bit remaster, part of the Eric Clapton remaster series. There was another one in November of 2004 from Polydor Records. That was remastered. It was a SACD/CD remaster. What's up, little pooch? Our little dogs came in to say hi. There you go, little pooch. Our little Coco came in to say hi. There was the 2011 40th anniversary remaster, the September 2013 Universal Music Japan Platinum SHM CD remaster. In February of 2017, the Mobile Fidelity SACD. And finally, the September 2020 Derek And The Dominos / Layla 50th anniversary sets. Man.
Well, you know, the collectors that have to have copies of everything probably went crazy with that album.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, God knows, especially with digital technology in listening to music being so hyped up nowadays. I'm surprised we don't. I'm surprised this album is not really issued on vinyl. I don't know.
True.
And if
I
it
guess
was,
my ears aren't that good because I've never heard a huge difference other than records, of course.
yeah, for me being an old record player listener, I would have to say that I guess, as I mentioned, the idea of all this digitaling, remastering is the way to connect to today's listening audience. Remember, kids today listen to a lot of digital stuff, and I guess bringing back these old songs from yesteryear, remastering into this bit, that bit, it's a way of trying to connect to today's. Yeah. And what's kind of, and we also got to talk about this. I remember reading about this. My mom told me about this. Eventually, after Patty Boyd and George divorced, I guess their marriage fell apart. Clapton got a hold of Patty Boyd. They started hanging out. They fell in love, and I guess in 1979 they got married. And
And then
guess
later on, he divorced her.
exactly. I don't know what happened with that there. I mean, it was considered a perfect rock and roll fairy tale. But the main thing about the wedding reception is that Harrison, Clapton were joined by Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney. It
Hmm.
was like three-quarters of the Beatles were reunited. All was missing was, of course, John Lennon. And which is interesting because, as I stated before, Harrison and Clapton would remain the best of friends up until Harrison's death in 2001. So, what are your memories of that hearing that album when it first came?
Oh man. Well, first off, I didn't realize it was Eric Clapton at first, and I was really enjoying the album. Then reading through the notes and stuff, seeing Clapton or heard it from somewhere or whatever, it's like,
Hmm.
oh, bonus.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but my favorite song on the album, other than Layla, because that's pretty much everybody's,
Top
was
pick
Bell
from that
Bottom
album.
Blues.
Yeah, Bell Bottom. That's a good song there. My
That
personal
was
favorite.
probably my favorite.
My personal favorite was the Little Wing cover that they did of Jimi Hendrix's tune. It was pretty interesting. They changed the notes up a little bit, whereas the original was in the key of E, low E flat, or let me see that. No, E minor. Whereas the Derek and the Dominos version was in B minor, and it was a pretty interesting cover that they did. No doubt about that.
Hmm. Yeah, it probably is a very close second, but I just really like Bell Bottom Blues.
Yeah, I was. You know what? That song was on my mind yesterday during my job for some reason. I was thinking about doing this show, and that song you mentioned came to my mind just out of the blues, and that was played heavily on the radio when I first started listening to radio back around 79, 78. That, along with the title cut, was heavily played a lot on some of these local stations.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of, let's see here. Now, you think we also got to talk about Jim Gordon. I'm glad I was reminded about this because I'm gonna, talk about him. What Jim Gordon? Okay, there we go. He was the drummer. Let me look up the situation there. Now, Gordon originally was a session drummer. He passed away in 2023, which was last year. He was a drummer, songwriter, convicted murderer. He was a,
Whoa.
yeah, exactly. He was a drummer for Derek and the Dominos. He was also a session drummer during the 60s and 70s. And let's go to the mental health situation because he was going through that issues. He developed schizophrenia and began to hear voices, including his late mother's, which compelled him to starve himself and prevented him from sleeping, relaxing, or playing the skins. His physicians misdiagnosed the problems and instead treated him for alcohol abuse.
Wow.
Now, let's go to the music career there. Let me get to the main point of, let me get to the mean meat of the matter. Okay. He played with the band on various US and UK tours. The group split up in 1971, Derek and The Dominos, that is, before they finished recording their second album. In addition to his drumming, Gordon was credited with contributing the piano coda for the title track of
Mm.
Layla. In later years, Bobby Whitlock claimed that the coda was not actually written by Gordon. He said Jim took that piano melody from his ex-girlfriend Rita Coolidge, the singer, and later
Oh, wow.
and later on would later become briefly a VH1 DJ when that network started out back in the mid 80s. In 1970, Gordon was part of Joe Cocker's Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour, and he also played on Dave Mason's album Alone Together the following year. He toured with Traffic, appeared on two of their albums, The Low Spark of High Heeled Boys, and he also played with Harry Nielsen on his album
Mm.
Nielsen Shamisen, if that's how it's pronounced.
Schmilson.
Schmilson, yes, that's one with Harry Nielsen is made out like a vampire.
Yeah.
Yes. He also contributed drum solo to the song Jump Into the Fire. He was also the
Great
drummer.
song, especially the 6 minute version.
Gordon was also the drummer on the Incredible Bongo Band's album Bongo Rock, released in 1972. And we all know the track Apache, which was a Shadows cover, by the way.
Hmm.
That track alone was used in God knows how many hip hop songs throughout the 1980s. It was sampled many times by Grandmaster Flash, MC Hammer for his song Turned His Mother Out. Definitely look for it on YouTube, folks. He recorded with Frank Zappa on the title cut of the album Apostrophe from 1974. And also in 1972, Gordon played drums on Helen Reddy's top US hit, I Am Woman. Who cannot forget that song? Hmm. The following year, 1973, he played with Johnny Rivers on his album Blue Suede Shoes as well, and on Art Garfunkel's what's it called Angel Clare albums. He
Quite a little
also,
resume that man had.
yes, it definitely. Appearing on the last Boogie in Paris live album with Johnny Rivers, he also appeared on the tracks by Steely Dan's album Pretzel Logic, including the single Ricky Don't Lose That Number, which we still hear
Mm.
on the various radio stations today. He again worked with Chris Hillen from the Byrds as a drummer in the Souther Hillman
Fury band. Yeah.
Fury band. And this
Souther
project
Hillman Fury.
and this project also featured J.D. Souther, if I'm correct.
Well, yeah, it's the Souther.
Yeah, exactly. Now J.D. Souther is he's a name in his own right. He wrote many songs with the Eagles. He also did a duet with James Taylor called Her Town 2. Very emotional song by the way I recommend listening to.
And Fury was part of the Blues Buffalo Springfield
With
and Poco.
I see. He also played drums on three tracks from Alice Cooper's 76 album, Alice Cooper Goes to Hell.
Oh, that's a good album.
Yeah, it is. I gotta check that album sometime. That and Billion Dollar Babies. Well, I actually had Billion Dollar Babies. Now, on tour with Joe Cocker in the 70s, Gordon reportedly punched his then girlfriend, Rita Coolidge, in the hotel hallway, causing
Mm.
her to end their relationship.
Yeah, that'll put an end to one.
Absolutely. In June of 1983, Gordon attacked his 71-year-old widowed mother, Rosa
Damn.
Marie Gordon, with a hammer and then fatally stabbed her with a butcher knife, claiming that a voice told him to kill her. Only after his arrest for murder was Gordon properly diagnosed with schizophrenia. At his trial, the court accepted that he had altitude schizophrenia, but he was not allowed to use an insanity defense because of charges in California law arising from the Federal Insanity Defense Reformed Act. In July of 1984, Gordon was sentenced to 16 years in life in prison. He was first eligible for parole in 1991, but was denied several times because he never attended a parole hearing. Wouldn't you know? In
Hmm.
2014, he declined to attend his hearing and was denied parole until at least 2018. A Los Angeles deputy district attorney stated at the hearing that Gordon was still seriously psychologically incapacitated.
Incapacitated.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And a quote danger when he is not taking his medication. How many times have we heard about that? People stop
Yeah.
taking their meds because they felt like it was a prison to them. They act like they're all old. I'm happy. I'm all well. And next thing you know, they crash like hell and go schizo. In November of 2017, Gordon was re-diagnosed with schizophrenia, and the following year he was denied parole again for the 10th time and was scheduled to become eligible again in March of 2021. At the time of his death, 2 years later, he was serving his sentence at the California Medical Faculty, a medical and psychotic, what's it called? Psychiatric. Why am I having pronouncing these names for some dumb reason? Either
It's
way,
sciatic.
yeah, mental ward, we'll call it, put it that way. And this was in California. He died in prison in March of 2023 at the age of 77. Two marriages, singer Renee Allman and dancer Joe Barreb, I guess their last name is pronounced. They both ended in divorce. He was survived by his daughter Amy Gordon, who was born in 1968. Wow. I heard about his man's case back in around 1992 when Clapton's bluesy version of Layla was played over the radio. And as I read in a tabloid magazine that Gordon was having all of these issues here, left and right. And wow, a sad case that went down with him. But you never know. Years on down the line, someone could be perfectly seem perfectly normal today until years later something happens with them and you go nuts. Now, does this make Jim Gordon the U.S. version of Sid Barrett? I probably people would say no because Sid Barrett never killed anybody,
Yeah.
and of course, even though Sid Barrett did all this crazy shit left and right, he never did anything totally heinous, like let alone hit his girlfriend. I never knew that he and Rita Coolidge were an item back in the day.
I didn't either.
Yeah, interesting. So, sad case in terms of Jim Gordon about that. What we got here? All right. So, are we doing movie madness tomorrow night?
Well, that was what I was curious what we want to do, movie or TV or what.
No, it's been a while since we did a movie show, and I know YR expressed it about doing a spotlight on all the various roles that this actor or actress done throughout their careers. And I'm thinking about we could possibly do that. We can name an actor or actress and talk about all the different roles that this movie, that TV soap opera, that movie, that TV show. I was,
Well, the first interesting one I can think of is Clint Eastwood.
oh yeah, obviously he's done it all. Gene Wilder, he did movies and TV. You remember Something Wilder later on in the 90s? He had a sitcom of his own. And I also think it's proper that we give a nod to all the various underrated actors, like, for example, Michael Shannon, who was in Knives Out with Don Johnson, who was in that show, Waco, The Aftermath, which ran on Showtime. And of course, to me, one of his best roles, General Zod from Man of Steel in 2013. He nailed that role down pat.
Well, I would think we would hit the other two first.
Yeah, absolutely. I suggest that we definitely do that as well. I'll get a hold of YR later on tonight or tomorrow to see if he's up for doing this. Still up to. I guess he left because he thought we were going to be live, but like I stated at the beginning of the show, I got to get a hold of someone to make sure my settings are correct to stream live again. I'm hoping to get a hold of either Dave Rose or Falmouth Ken, or maybe Stony Tony to see if they're willing to lend a hand.
Okay.
All right, there. So, like I said, I'll get a hold of YR.
What are we going to do next Wednesday?
What album do you want to do?
Hmm.
I know you mentioned Pet Sounds from the Beach Boys.
Yeah, which actually was number 2 on that list.
Oh yeah, this time I'll let you take the lead in terms of story telling of the album because I never really listened to the album myself, to be honest, and I'm interested to learn about this album myself.
Well, if you get a chance, run through it.
All right, there. All right, there. All right, so next Wednesday, Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys, and
Okay.
tomorrow night on Movie Madness, we'll definitely do all the roles that this actor actress have done throughout their years. All right, and
Okay.
all right, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe to Ark's Patreon, patreon.com/arknoya, and also subscribe to his YouTube channel just as well. It's been a while. Do you use OBS when you go live?
I did I haven't been live for a while,
I know. I was like, I was wondering, but you still have
but I
OBS?
did use Yobi. Yeah,
All right, so
I just
maybe
hadn't done it.
you should probably And did you have any issues with when you went live in terms of data not showing up?
No, it usually went pretty smooth.
All right,
I
Derek.
think a lot of that's computer related.
I'm thinking so because I stated that the computer that I'm using to do these music sets and shows, it was they had an issue with it before with the one of the mechanisms receiving the Wi-Fi, and they told me
Hmm.
that it got it fixed. But I'm thinking maybe possibly something still maybe off with it. Now, I tried this thing here. It's the Wi-Fi adapter. I got it from the nearby Walmart. I plugged it in one time, but I had to take it out because I tried, recording with my OBS, a music set, and all of a sudden it's like things were getting botched up, things are getting delayed. At one point, I heard a
Mm.
kind of stuff. I was like, "Holy crap!" Up top, I took the adapter out, and it's like, "Holy crap!" Better lay off of that so we figure out what the hell is going on. All right, so
Okay,
Try.
then we'll do tomorrow night.
Gotcha. Well, gotcha. All right. For Ark and myself, we'll see you guys tomorrow night for Movie Madness. Bye bye.
Bye.
All right, dear.